Keating lashes out over his government's budget crisis. Last Olympic delegate visits Sydney amid speculation about our bid. Street brawl on the north coast leaves 3 policemen injured. Good evening. Defending his leadership style, Prime Minister Keating has been handing out the blame for the uncertainty over the budget. He's criticised colleagues in the Labour movement and attacked the opposition for sending the dollar into crisis.
In one of the most revealing interviews he's given, the Prime Minister dealt with everything from the budget crisis to complaints from Labour MPs about his presidential style and lack of consultation.
Consultation's a two-way street, Laurie. There wasn't a lot of consultation with me in the 3 weeks coming up the election when people were walking with the old head bowed down towards the guillotine. There wasn't any consultation then. When I was on the burning deck.
And now he blames budget criticism from ACTU President Martin Ferguson and New South Wales Labour Council Chief Michael Eason for much of the current crisis.
They were the two who then said, this is a free-for-all. So then members of the caucus said, well, if they can have a say, so can we, etc., and away it goes.
But the Prime Minister's harshest criticism was for the opposition. Budget blocking is partly responsible, he says, for the dollar's plunge.
Rogue behaviour by John Hewson and the opposition, failing to pass the legitimate government's legitimate budget. What you've seen, any of this instability which is coming off the exchange rate, is coming from the tactics of the opposition in the Senate.
It is not rogue behaviour, but a robust stand by the coalition to vote against unfair fuel and other tax increases.
At the end of this week, Mr Keating leaves Australia for a 2-week trip to Europe and the United States, and he'll be taking one very contentious domestic political issue with him. The Prime Minister will discuss Australia's Republican future when he meets the Queen.
And what I think that means from the Labor side of Australian public life on the question of the constitutional monarchy.
On his return, the problem of unemployment will be waiting. A special levy on high-income earners to fund new jobs could be part of a solution.
It's an option, Laurie, it's an option, and one that I've got an open mind on.
Peter Harvey, Canberra.
Sydney's Olympic bid team has made its final pitch for the Games on home soil with the last official function for a visiting IOC delegate. Mexico's Mario Vasquez Rania was encouraging about Sydney's chances, saying we have what it takes to host the Games.
Good luck.
Encouraging words from the IOC delegate, but not enough to inspire this headline. It followed a meeting yesterday between Mario Vasquez Rania and Prime Minister Keating. Senior Rania says the paper got it wrong.
What I meant is that you're one of the horses that will arrive in front. You might be number 1 or number 2 or probably number 3.
Bid officials were embarrassed.
I just think it's disappointing to have people depict Australians in that way, because that's not what we're like.
The July report of the IOC's Inquiry Commission was also enthusiastic about our chances. It said Sydney offered conditions far beyond the bid requirements. But Senior Rania says it did more damage than good.
In sports, when you have something that is really too lean towards one side, it's not beneficial. Well, that's the way I feel.
Senior Rania is the last IOC delegate to visit Sydney. And while he says the city has everything it needs to win the bid, he won't say how he'll be voting on September 23rd. Local bookmakers have Sydney neck and neck with Beijing. Michelle Stone, National 9 News.
Another fire at a family home has claimed 2 lives, this time a man and his 18-month-old nephew at a house near Brisbane. Before he died, the man managed to save 3 other children.
The fire tore through the Fibro home west of Brisbane just before dark yesterday. Because of the intense heat, rescue crews couldn't get inside for 10 minutes. When they did, they found 2 bodies, 37-year-old Nguyen Trung and his 18-month-old nephew. Trung had been babysitting his 4 nephews when the blaze broke out. Despite the choking smoke and heat, he managed to save the 3 older boys, passing them out of the window.
I've seen the 2 little boys that were on the lawn, and next minute I heard someone in the house screaming.
The boys' uncle had gone back for their young brother, but by then the entire home was engulfed.
He come back to rescue the baby one, and somehow he just trapped.
The building would have been very heavily smoke logged. There would have been a lot of heat. He would have been under a lot of stress, and he was very successful in removing at least 3 children.
The boys' parents were away visiting friends. It's believed the fire started in the kitchen. Back in Sydney, 2 victims of yesterday's shocking fire at Macquarie Fields remain in a serious condition. 3 young children died in the blaze, thought to have been started with matches. 10-year-old Melissa Ratnakoni and her father Michael were badly burned. The children's mother is being counselled. Daniel Blyde, National 9 News.
3 policemen have been hurt in an overnight brawl at Nambucca Heads on the state's north coast. It apparently started when a group of rugby league supporters was refused entry to the local RSL club.
Just before midnight, a crowd of more than 200 turned up at the Nambucca Heads RSL after a rugby league carnival. But the club announced it was closing and refused them entry. That's when the violence started.
The rest of the contingent that were outside then began to riot. They weren't happy with not being able to come in for a drink, but we did explain to them that it was our closing time.
The mob overturned 3 cars parked outside, stealing the tools from one and using them as missiles to break more than 30 windows at the club. Half a dozen local police arrived, but the crowd turned on them. One patrol car was badly damaged when a concrete block was thrown at the windscreen. 3 officers were hit by flying objects, suffering cuts and bruises. As police waited for backup from nearby towns, the mob moved along the street, smashing car windows, eventually stopping at a hotel liquor barn where they stole thousands of dollars worth of alcohol. More than 30 police eventually managed to break up the rioters, but not before they'd caused more than $20,000 damage.
The sad part of it is the aftermath now with the staff that were involved with last night. There are quite a few of them upset, and they will need extensive counselling.
So far, nobody has been arrested over the brawl, but inquiries are continuing. Raymond Dale, National 9 News.
In the news ahead, more money for women's health and how Americans are stopping carjackers.
Hi, Omar.
Women's health services will be the big winner in Tuesday's state budget. The government will boost spending by up to 20%, creating specialist facilities and targeting some of the biggest killers of Australian women.
The state budget is just 2 days away, but this much is known. Women's health services will attract $93 million this year, up $13 million. Health Minister Ron Phillips wants to raise the profile of women's health to the status of AIDS and community services. To do that, there'll be more money to encourage women to have pap smears and breast examinations. A new sexual assault hotline is to be established. As well, 4 hospitals will get separate women's units, and there's extra money for the Royal Hospital for Women as it moves from Paddington to Randwick. And some good news for the 10,000 cancer patients treated every year at the Royal North Shore Hospital. A $1 million hostel was opened today, the money raised by hundreds of volunteers. Shirley Sinclair, the wife of the New South Wales Governor, did the honours.
The word cancer has become in our society a word that puts a chill down one's spine. And if only the word meant the sign of the zodiac.
The Blue Gum Lodge in Greenwich will provide welcome accommodation for country patients who travel to Sydney for treatment. A similar hostel was built at Westmead Hospital, and the Cancer Council is hoping to build several more. Andrew Parker, National 9 News.
Overseas, a landmark peace accord between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization is tonight one step closer to reality. The PLO's Yasser Arafat has won support for the deal from his powerful Fatah faction, and the agreement could be signed in Washington in just over a week.
Fatah, the largest faction of the PLO, had just put its stamp of approval on the agreement with Israel. Arafat was confident mutual recognition would not be far behind.
This will be discussed, and it is now under discussion, and I think 2 letters will be exchanged.
When will they be exchanged?
When? Very soon.
Then, in an unprecedented interview with Israeli television, Arafat said, "Peace has started, there's no way back." This was the reaction in Tel Aviv, not just to the latest additional step forward, but to all the mind-bending events of the past week. More than 100,000 Israelis gave their Saturday night to peace. There were other rallies on the other side of the line. At the dismal West Bank refugee camp called Colandia, people cheered the prospect that they might not be refugees for the rest of their lives. They gave their support to the PLO and to peace, which today seemed to be the same thing. And Jordan's King Hussein joined the ranks of the supporters today, throwing his weight fully behind the deal. And he said it's only a matter of time before Jordan reaches its own agreement with Israel.
Japan's typhoon Yancy claimed more lives overnight before weakening and veering out to sea. With winds that literally blew people off their feet, the typhoon left at least 35 dead and 11 missing on the southern island of Kyushu. Yancy is the most powerful typhoon to hit Japan in more than 3 decades, triggering widespread flooding in coastal regions. It's now been downgraded to a tropical storm. Weather experts say it's now unlikely to trouble Japan's main island of Honshu. Police in Portugal have fought running battles with soccer fans after their club's victory in a local match was overturned. The rioting went on for most of the night in a small town north of the capital, Lisbon. At its peak, police used water cannon, rubber bullets and tear gas. More than 30 people were taken to hospital and dozens of others received minor injuries on both sides. One of Fantasy Island's most famous players, Hervé Villechaize, has died at the age of 50. The French-born American played Tattoo, the island director's assistant, in the long-running hit show of the late 70s. Californian authorities say he killed himself at his Los Angeles home. Villechaize had a history of medical problems because of his size, just 116 centimetres tall. Americans are resorting to bizarre methods of deterring carjackers as the thieves become increasingly violent. With the crime growing in popularity, it spawned a new industry to protect vehicle and driver.
There you see a sheet covering the body of the latest victim of a carjacking here.
Every 19 seconds in the US, someone steals a car.
It basically is a war zone out here. You have to be on your toes constantly.
Carjack victims like Kevin Marlowe and his wife have joined a growing number of Californians now fortifying their vehicles with high-tech gear. This one triggers when someone opens the door without using the security code. The next time the car slows down, the engine cuts out.
There it is right there, and we're dead.
Some drivers are swapping to bulletproof glass.
Hi, Omar.
But it's Safety Man who's shaping as the brainiest bet yet. It works on the theory that carjackers often only glance to see if their victim's alone. It may look silly, but over here, it's a silent partner that could save your life. There were 21,000 carjackings in America last year, but in a clear and growing trend, many offenders are no longer satisfied with just the car, but are taking their victims' lives as well.
We would encourage the public to use any kind of a device on their home or in their car that would assist them in preventing this type of crime.
With fear fueling the market, Safety Man is popping up everywhere.
You can laugh all you want. If it stops someone from stealing my car, I'm going to do whatever I can.
Police are already worried criminals may learn to circumvent the gadgets and are praying they don't resort to other more violent ways of getting what they want. Warren Clark, National 9 News, Los Angeles.
Ken Sutcliffe with sport is next, and Elimination Day in the Rugby League.
That's right, Jim, but we promise not to tell you the result, just a taste of the match. We'll have that and all the action from the US Open tennis.
Oh, Michael Chang, the best lob in tennis.
In Rugby League, sudden death for either Manly or Brisbane at the football stadium. The elimination semi-final played in front of 38,000. Now, we're not going to give away the score, as Nine's coverage of the match begins right after the news.
Some consolation for the injured Ricky Stewart was the Dally M Award for the Player of the Year, and he was also voted Players' Player. Sudden death football attracted another big crowd, many there to see if Manly could extend a run of 8 wins.
Are they grand final bound?
There was no tomorrow for the loser, and both sides knew it.
Crunching tackle!
In the lower grades, Manly won the reserve grade 12-10 over the Gold Coast, and in President's Cup, St George 14, Canberra 12. Last night, the Dragons walked off the stadium 2 wins away from a title, partly because the early footwork of Mark Coyne peeled open Canberra's defence.
Coyne gets into a space inside the 40-metre line.
We've had 3 very hard games. We've been under a lot of pressure there too before this one, and we certainly answered all our critics who thought that we mightn't have the ammunition to get there.
Legitimising this claim was St George's ability to promote a 19-year-old back rower into David Barnhill's place at the last minute.
This is young Tallis now.
I was very nervous, actually, because
Bradley, Clyde and Laurie Daly and Mel Meninga, like they've been my heroes, you know what I mean, ever since I was about 15 and that, and to go out there and play against them today, you know, was something different.
With 5 tries, the Dragons have shattered Canberra's confidence. For the second week, the Raiders spent the first half completely in frustration.
Jolting stuff.
They didn't make errors, and especially in that first 20 minutes, we couldn't score.
Stitches in Brad Mackay's mouth would indicate this tackle from Mal Meninga was way too high, but the impact didn't shake Mackay's determination.
We know the road from last year, and we knew what to expect today, and we knew what to expect from Canberra.
Tim Sheridan, National 9 News.
In schoolboy rugby league, St Gregory's College Campbelltown has won the Commonwealth Bank Cup, beating Brisbane's Wavell State High School in the final. Set in hot favourites, St Gregory's won 27-6 to claim its 8th cup title.
A school-age success in a different field, Nathan Cavalieri warmed up the crowd. St Gregory's supporters soon cheering half Chris Flint to the line. Flint sparked their second, targeting winger Jared Quilty. The boys of St Greg's were a class above. Wavell's Dylan Matthews unable to prevent number 3. Wavell's missed tackle count grew as quickly as the score. St Gregory's up 27-0.
Try for Deary.
With 13 minutes left and the result beyond doubt, some scores were settled in a nasty brawl that saw 2 players from each side sent off.
Well, not good to see in Commonwealth Bank Cup football.
But St Gregory's was much too good, continuing the college's domination of the competition.
A tremendous performance.
Using today's games to promote the Kick a Goal for Life campaign, volunteers were kept busy taking donations for the Fund for Cancer Research. The total is already well over $500,000. You have until 9 o'clock tonight to make a donation by phoning free call number 008 677 977. David Peters, National 9 News.
In rugby union, Warringah has knocked Eastwood out of the finals race at the TG Milner Field. Warringah won a thrilling minor semi, 13-12. The Rats home on the back of 2 late tries.
The Rats conceded 6 tries in half an hour to Randwick last week and haven't beaten Eastwood this season. But clearly they weren't about to surrender this one. All the good forward work came to naught, and by half-time the radar boot of Marty Roebuck had Eastwood ahead 9-3. Social niceties between rugby props go something like this: Rat Ray Smith and Rod Moore punching their way to a standstill. In the second half, Roebuck extended the Woodies' lead to 9 points. Then the Rats suddenly found legs. A looping pass from Perry Smith finding Michael G, and on the end of a great pass, winger Ili Toga was over. It was 12-8 Eastwood, and 6 minutes from full time, long passes from McEwen and Walton had the Rats 3/4 away again. Centres Smith and G giving their team another appointment with Randwick next week. Tim Sheridan, National 9 News.
In AFL, a close one in the elimination final. The Adelaide Crows defeating Hawthorn by 15 points at the MCG. And last night, Carlton beat Essendon by 2 points in the qualifying final. In women's basketball, the Sydney Flames have won their first National League title, beating Perth 65-64 last night. And the Kings kept their playoff hopes alive with a 105-95 win over North Melbourne last night. Day 6 at the US Open Tennis has been hit hard by bad weather, only the night schedule escaping the rain. Jenny Byrne was the only Australian in action, losing in 3 sets. 7th seed Michael Chang moved into the round of 16, as did the convincing Pete Sampras.
The turnstiles clicked for a Saturday of tennis, but Jack Nicholson was just one of thousands caught out by 5 hours of rain. Still, the Big Apple wore its best nighttime look for world number 2 Pete Sampras, businesslike in his march past Arno Bush. Champion here 3 years ago, Sampras is favourite with the bookies for a second US crown. If the draw pans out correctly, Michael Chang, the 7th seed, will meet Sampras in the quarters. Against Bernd Karbacher, Chang has never won. Today, his reputation for power and court speed was too much for the German. And for Patrick McEnroe, talking to the courtside plants, even swiping at them didn't help, losing to Thomas Muster in straight sets. Coverage continues from 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. And at the World Rowing Championships, gold to Australians Gary Liner and Bruce Hick in the lightweight double scull. Alison Davies and Vicky Toogood took silver in the coxless pairs, while our men's lightweight coxless pair just missed out on a bronze. Peter Overton, National 9 News.
Local hero Luca Catalora has taken pole position for tonight's Italian 500cc motorcycle Grand Prix in Misano. Catalora upstaged teammate Wayne Rainey to set the fastest time. Mick Doohan will start from 5th spot, coverage on 9 from 11:15 tonight. The drag racing season blasted off at Eastern Creek today with the return match in the State of Origin Wild Bunch Series between New South Wales and Queensland. It was close racing, the Maroons pipping the locals to wrap up the series 2-0. Jim, that's it in sport, and happy Father's Day, old fella.
Thanks, Ken. I missed the breakfast in bed this morning there. The weather is next, then bush races at Birdsville. First the pools. Now the weather, and after some overnight showers, the weather finally improved a little for Father's Day. Sydney had a maximum temperature of 17 degrees. That's 2 below average. Tomorrow should be even better, fine, plenty of sunshine, a city top of 19. On the synoptic chart, a strong high is moving slowly eastwards across the state. That means those showers and drizzle should mostly disappear tomorrow. Around the country, fine almost everywhere except for Perth and Alice Springs. And looking ahead for Sydney, fine, getting steadily warmer, though some more rain possible by Wednesday. If it's spring, it must be Birdsville Carnival time, the racing weekend when bush meets the city and both let their hair down. The Queensland outback town swells from a population of 100 to more than 4,000. Many fly in for the event, keeping the airport almost as busy as Sydney and Melbourne put together. Beer supplies are replenished by the truckload. This year, at least 100,000 cans were emptied. But despite the large and boisterous crowd, the police had a relatively quiet time.
We've had a couple of little moments, but it's been a particularly good crowd. I'd say one of the best behaved crowds in the last perhaps 5 years.
The cup itself was won by 6-1 pick Engrossing. The weekend raised close to $50,000 for the Flying Doctor Service. And that's the news this Sunday night. I'm Jim Waley. Good night.